Good afternoon. I'm Guy Berthiaume, Librarian Archivist of Canada.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to this new series of conferences that acknowledges the knowledge of our colleagues at Library and Archives Canada. In numerous fields, as you know, the competence of colleagues at LAC is recognized on a national and international level, and it is for this reason that it is crucial that we share this knowledge with the entire community. In my opinion, not to do so would almost be criminal, or in any case, contrary to the law. Therefore, almost criminal, since our laws expect us to contribute to the cultural, social, and economic fulfillment of the free and democratic society that is Canada. Therefore, we will be in complete legality with our exceptional speaker, Élizabeth Mongrain.
Our speaker this afternoon. She holds a bachelor's in history from Laval University. Nobody's perfect. They used to have a football team there, but a long time ago. And a master's also in history from the University of Ottawa. She's been with LAC since 2000.
She started her career as an archivist responsible for governmental archives, and she has evolved toward positions as a project archivist and a senior project officer for private archives. Élizabeth was responsible for Jean Chrétien's archives project in Shawinigan from 2006 to 2009, and she is now the manager of the Governance and Political Affairs Department.
Her talk today will focus on the role that Library and Archives Canada plays before, during, and after a federal election. Élizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Berthiaume, for your presentation and for giving me this opportunity today, because it is the first of this series. I am honored to be able to present the accomplishments of our department. In fact, I am very happy that LAC asked me specifically because the activities of the Political Archives Department are of great interest to me. I love working there. This is a series that also aims at making our experts known, and I am happy to contribute to this goal by presenting the work of the people with whom I work, and many of them are here today. I also recognize a few old colleagues that are in the room and my mentor, Peter de Lottenville, who is hiding in the corner back there. So, before I begin, there is something that doesn't appear in my CV that Mr. Berthiaume could not have mentioned. It is the answer to the question, do I enjoy my work? And that will give you an indication as to whether I am an objective person or not in this context. I don't think that in the federal public service there is a better management position because I don't know if you know this, but working with assessment and acquisition experts is exciting. These individuals that I work with every day challenge me with serious, thorough, important, and sometimes difficult questions that keep me on my toes. I don't need any coffee. I quit a long time ago because of the department I work with. I don't need any additional stimulants. On top of that, there are very few managers at my level, at the reporting level, that have the opportunity to meet with influential politicians many times a year in the context of their work, and to convince them to build relationships that will convince them to hand over their private documents to the Library and Archives Canada to build a political Canadian heritage. Today I want to briefly present, first of all, the LAC's mandate, Library and Archives Canada. Secondly, and this is the main point of my presentation today, I will present the activities of the department responsible for the political archives when there is a federal election. Our activities bring forward two wonderful challenges that we face to eventually preserve or ensure the preservation of the Canadian political documentary heritage. There are certain tools, such as the depository services, certain situations, such as the elections, cabinet shuffles, retirements, resignations, and strategies. Our proactiveness, our collaboration with other public memory institutions that allow us to do our work with great confidence, and I will speak of those as well. Finally, I will present our concrete and up-to-date results of the October 19, 2015 federal election, and also the 2011 results to give you a few comparable results. Obviously, there have been other instances where LAC has played a significant role during an electoral period for web harvesting, physical control of document transfers, communications for media requests, finances, security. However, I will focus my communication almost uniquely on the activities of the Government and Political Affairs Department. Now, let's begin. Have we succeeded or not in adding collections to the Library and Archives Canada vaults? You will find out in about 20 minutes.
At LAC, we acquire and preserve 3 types of records: government records, published material, and private records. The political records created by the political men and women in Canada fall under the last category, private records. They aren't covered by the Access to the Information Act, and their creators aren't obliged to transfer them to Library and Archives Canada. I will not read the whole LAC Act to you. I'd like to keep you awake if at all possible. But in the context of interest today, records created by politicians, there's 3 clauses in Section 7 of the Act that are of interest. LAC is to acquire and preserve the documentary heritage. LAC is to make that heritage known to Canadians and to anyone with an interest in Canada and to facilitate access to it. And LAC is to be the permanent repository of publications of the Government of Canada and of government and ministerial records that are of historical or archival value. And then there is Clause 12.1 that says, no government or ministerial record shall be disposed of, including by being destroyed, without the written consent of the Librarian and Archivist of Canada. What is LAC saying about penalties when it comes to not complying with the Act? Well, I'm wondering if some of you notice our supermassive archival SWAT team at the door. Probably not. And that is why the work of Governance and Political Archives section is so essential. It relies heavily on creating work relationship with politicians and their staff, also with other federal institutions. And it relies also on education, tact, momentum, and proactivity. Now,
the slide presented here shows the archival service that worked on the 2015 project, Election 2015. There are 2 employees missing from this photo, but as you can see, there are about a dozen of us that worked on the 2015 election. The role of the Governance and Political Affairs Department is to assess and acquire Canadian political heritage, or to ensure that it is preserved elsewhere in Canada. How to educate politicians and their political personnel about the importance of documenting what they create, whether it comes from a minister, a party leader that has never been in power, a prime minister, or a member of parliament who has had to take care of sensitive or important files for a prolonged period of time. Each collection constitutes a voice that allows us to better understand the decision-making process in Canada and the factors that have influenced it. Our role is crucial, even though it often takes place behind the scenes. Let's discuss our challenges. Our first challenge is the political machine itself. 2 quasi-inseparable aspects of our clients' personalities seem to infringe on our objective and frequently add a sense of excitement to our work. Primarily, the politician's willingness to control the information, the message, leaks. I'm assuming that this isn't new to you. And secondly, the inability for any active politician to imagine the end of his political career except for, obviously, if the decision is their own and they are planning a post-political career. In fact, in order to win and stay at the helm, you must be convinced and, if you prefer, you must also have a healthy and resilient ego. It's part of the skills required for that role. In this context, how can Library and Archives Canada, who, let's be honest, is not the focus of the majority of politicians' strategic priorities, convince them to hand over their documents? As you can imagine, it's not easy to convince a political figure that doesn't want to be convinced. Which is why, when there is an opportunity for success, we must put all of the odds on our side to acquire the content that will have an impact on our understanding of our political history. Establishing healthy relationships with our clients based on clear and transparent information in order to properly manage expectations is a key element. Here you see an archivist, an ex-archivist from the department, Bruno Lemay, with Mr. Chrétien toward the completion of Jean Chrétien's archiving project, when we are signing the conditions for access. To do so, we have to choose the most appropriate time, and an election is just that. A moment when politicians' priorities and those of the LAC have an opportunity to cross paths. The representativeness of this collection is built moment by moment in a continuous readjustment to adequately document the creation of proposed legislation, important issues, or significantly historical political events and Canadian democracy.
Politicians organize their office and the management of their records in their office the way they choose in order for their operations to be efficient. Ministers are guided by Library and Archives Canada guidelines on managing records in the minister's office. These guidelines help making sure the right information can be found and provided to the minister in a timely way to enable decision-making, quality service delivery, and to support transparent, accountable, effective, and efficient governance. The minister's multiple roles requires that records kept in their office be broken down in 4 categories: government records, ministerial records, personal and political records, and cabinet documents. These records must be filed separately for reasons of operating efficiency and confidentiality, and to facilitate compliance with statutory requirements. What exactly are the 4 types of records to be found in the office of a minister? Well, the cabinet documents are easily identified. They are managed by the Privy Council Office, PCO, and any copies a minister has will be returned to PCO. The government records are under the control of the government institution. Although they may transit by the minister's office, they need to be sent back to the department records office when the minister's office is done with them. Of course, ministers can decide to keep a copy of these in their records. Personal and political records includes the minister's constituency business and work as a member of parliament, party political matters, including elections and leadership races, party organization and caucus affairs, records relating to the private life and personal interest of the minister. The ministerial records are everything else. More specifically, they are a record of a member of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada who holds the office of a minister and that pertains to that office, other than a record that is of personal and political nature or a government records. It isn't always easy to decide if a record is government or ministerial or personal and political. Although, since 2011, a Supreme Court decision is helping ministers to determine it. As confirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada, a minister's office is not in and of itself a government institution, nor is it part of a government institution for purposes of the Access to Information Act. Therefore, minister's office is not subject to the ATI, Access to Information. It's simple, eh? Well, not exactly. There's a however. However, records found exclusively in a minister's office could be deemed to be under the control of a government institution if the 2-step test process that is part of the 2011 Supreme Court decision is satisfied. For example, in 2011, the Prime Minister's and Minister's agenda were deemed to be ministerial and not governmental. So these previous information were for a minister. What about an MP now? What will be found? What can we expect to find in an MP office that has less resources, less staff to help them organize their records? Your bet is as good as mine. Sometimes it is impressive. Did you see the online photos of Peter Stauffer's office? Well, you should go take a look. So, some of the other challenges are unpredictability of results. Even though we prepare, we can never predict. Even polls don't always predict results accurately. For example, in 2011, there was the orange wave that none of us had really predicted. So despite the best preparation and planning, we may be caught by surprise and have to react. How do we mitigate that? I will explain later, but soon. It is essential that all LAC staff members at all levels maintain political impartiality in the election process. We are building collection as representative as possible. That is our main goal. One of our other challenge, which is more recent, is the presence of private records onto the servers of government records, onto government servers, because these are not separated, they are kept on the same servers. So when we're at the time of transfers, it can be a challenge to differentiate in between what is a government record and what is a ministerial record. Although we always are able to do it, but it can be a challenge nowadays.
The political archives have some particularities. First, these documents are often of a sensitive or very sensitive nature, and whether they are or not, that is how they are perceived by the person who has created them. Second, these documents generally come to us during somewhat delicate circumstances, such as cabinet shuffles, elections, resignations, or retirements. The LAC acquisition process does a brief detour to the depository services. In fact, the documents from political men and women arrive at LAC through the depository services, which is a temporary storage service prior to a donation. What are their concrete services? The temporary storage and security of a politician's documents is just that. The politician remains as the owner of the documents, and no one is allowed to view them without his or her authorization, including Library and Archives Canada personnel, except once the donation is complete. Therefore, these documents arrive at the depository services first, then we proceed to the donation, and following that, they become the property of Library and Archives Canada. These storage services offered in climate and humidity-controlled vaults are intrinsically linked to our acquisition strategy for numerous reasons. When politicians place their documents in storage, these potential donors are able to progressively detach themselves from the materials they've created and can envision this donation more serenely, and eventually give us access to these documents. Successive installments also ensure the integrity of a collection, whether it be from a prime minister, a politician, or a minister. More directly, obviously, we frequently avoid losing documents by using the depository services than if a politician had transferred the totality of their documents the day after a political defeat, for example. Finally, whether they are politically sensitive or not, politicians' collections are comprised of a wealth of personal and third-party information. The lapse of time between storing these documents via the depository services and their acquisition allows us to make these documents accessible much faster following this procedure, because a portion of the required restricted access period has already passed while in storage. A good example of the depository services efficiency is Jean Chrétien's collection. The former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien used the depository services 40 times throughout his career, which started in 1967, when he subsequently made his first deposit to Library and Archives Canada, and made his final deposit in 2003, then his donation in 2004. The result is a collection that documents the totality of the portfolios for which he was responsible, and for which access requirements have easily been established. In short, the depository services are a precious tool of LAC, used for politicians' future collections. Now we come to the true substance of what we do, our activities.
Often we are asked, how can you decide whose records to acquire or not? Well, our goal is to build a representative collection. So where do we start? First, there is the evaluation and acquisition policy that defines LAC's main criteria, which are significance, suitability, sufficiency, and sustainability. These are broad markers that allows us to answer a few questions like, is the client of national significance? What about the records produced or offered by these clients? It isn't because someone is significant that he or she will have produced records of interest. Is LAC the best institution to acquire these records? Even if nationally significant, could the research interest be more prominent in another part of Canada? Does LAC already have a lot of related material? Even if significant, maybe LAC already has enough about this subject, this place, this event, this person. Are the records in good condition? If not, is the content so unique that it would be worth preserving it anyhow? Secondly, we have another tool, which is the section acquisition strategy. It helps identify the following: our pool of potential donors. In our case, it's fairly easy. We had 308 MPs, now we have 338, that's our pool. We also consider political parties' record and sometimes political advisors or political exam staff members. The strategy also identifies our priority. If we could only acquire one phone, what would it be? Would it be the phone of an MP, of a PM, of a minister? Based on national significance, suitability, sufficiency, and sustainability, it would most certainly be the one of a PM. So it is a very good thing that we don't have to acquire only one phone. Thirdly, there are all our acquisition strategies that allows us to identify and fill our collection gaps, which are varying from time to time. Sometimes we need to look at our gaps with a gender perspective, sometimes with a language perspective, a geographic representation perspective, or a governing versus non-governing party perspective. In 2011 and 2015, over 60% of the voting population didn't vote for the elected party. It means we need to document these other parties in order to have a representative collection. The responsible archivists have a broad range of expertise and various degrees of experience. Everyone has been trained in the necessary policies and procedures prior to the election so that they are able to facilitate the exercise in a knowledgeable, fast, and efficient manner. As well as providing a vital documentary function, the election activities provide valuable internal collaboration opportunities. Due to the complexity of the exercise, a number of different areas at LAC are involved in the process. Physical control for transport, comms for inevitable media requests, digital capacity and preservation in case of a more complex transfer of digital records, and all of our specialized media colleagues if expertise or extra expertise is needed. The section has established clear policies and procedure to follow during a federal election or a cabinet shuffle, based on years of experience and practices. Procedures were written down by the Political Archives section during the August 2007 cabinet shuffle. All procedure phases described in this document were created, developed, devised, tested, confirmed, and refined during the course of this cabinet shuffle, and they were updated since then through all other shuffle and election. They can apply to MPs, ministers, or PMs. These procedures provide a clear and thorough guide for archivists. They ensure the safe and secure management of important documentary heritage in a fast and efficient manner, while maintaining a calm and professional atmosphere during a short and intense period of activity. They ensure we keep calm and carry on. Okay. Concretely, and armed with everything mentioned previously, here is what we do in the months leading to an election. We research each of the then 308 MPs' career, trying to figure out which one may have created the records that would match our criteria. Which ones work on important files? The length of their career might also be taken into consideration. Will we offer our services to all of them? No. We will focus on the records that are most at risk, which means we will be proactive with the selected MPs that have announced that they're not running for election, and with the ones that will be defeated. Would we refuse to consider other records because they aren't coming from a targeted MP? Of course not. If they are offered to us and match our criteria, we will consider them. You may wonder, if we are doing our brainstorming session well, based on proper criteria, how can this scenario happen? Well, because up to this point, it is only informed speculation based on the importance of a person. There is a difference in between being a significant politician and documenting significant events properly. It isn't rare that a less central MP or minister took better notes or documented an event better than the more central actors. From then on, it is all a funnel exercise. We come up usually with a list of about a third of the House. We have brainstorming sessions around this list during which we discuss to make sure we are targeted the most significant MPs. May they be MP, PM, leaders of political parties, ministers. What are the chances of LAC being interested in an independent MP, for example? You may think it's not very high. Some of you may remember Chuck Cadman, who was an MP for the Reform and then for the Canadian Alliance, and who ended up winning as an independent in the 2004 election. During 2005 budget vote, Cadman voted with the Liberal government on the budget, therefore forcing a tie and preventing the country from going into yet another election. The tie had to be broken by the Speaker of the House, and Kenman passed away a few months later in 2005. He had been fighting cancer since 2004. Did LAC target him as an important MP, you think? Well, yes, we did. Prior to the election date, we will get in touch with the House of Commons to make sure their procedures for helping defeated MPs hasn't changed since the last exercise. We will collaborate with Treasury Board, Privy Council Office, Shared Services Canada, and Canadian School of Public Service to offer training to the people in charge of transition and to know the procedures for ministers to get their digital records often stored on departmental servers. Another LAC team, led by Tom Smythe, the digital capacity team, will also be crawling websites of politicians. They've started this year in January, and they've been harvesting these websites since. Here are a few examples of what has been collected up to now with the web harvesting. Record of the proceedings of the House and Senate and all legislative activity. The websites of cabinet ministers and all 308 MPs. Political party platforms. Key blogs discussing polls and making election prediction, as well as the media. To date, we have collected about 340 gigabytes of data comprising 3 million plus digital assets, biggest election project ever in terms of web harvesting. This team is also talking with PCU to arrange a transfer of some Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook content. They are currently recrawling all the above material and are collecting the record of the new cabinet and the media coverage. We most recently did the mandate letters posted at the new pm.gc.ca. We will begin harvesting again soon as the new parliament comes back in December. Back to the political archives team now. Prior to the election, we will identify MPs and ministers who have already announced they are not running for the next election. This is a very good exercise to conduct as the time frame is longer and less stressful. The emotional element of having lost a seat is not present. It provides a good practice for what will happen. It provides a good exercise for what will happen the day after. If procedures need to be adjusted and new members need to get some training, it will all be done prior to the day. Then the day arrives, and it's very quiet because nothing happens on the day of. We all go vote, and we're waiting for 10:15, where the results will be announced. And then we prepare. We meet very early on the day after, and it's a very well-rehearsed choreography. Every team member is assigned a set of defeated MPs, leaders, and ministers, and we all get on the phone. Phone information from these MPs and their offices have been printed days before because they will disappear from the phone books within 24 to 48 hours. MPs and ministers will have about 2 weeks to get out of their office, so LAC has to act fast. During the first few days, we are mainly on the phone, leaving messages frenetically. We need to reach a warm body, that's the goal. Once we establish contact, staffers are often very happy to realize there are services because staffers move very quickly in office of ministers and MPs, so they're not always aware of our services, even if we try to inform them periodically. So we will deliver empty boxes. We will provide advice on what could have archival value. We will provide template for listing their records, and even in some cases, we will pack their office.
The duties performed during the 2 weeks following an election are often physical and require a great deal of diplomacy. The people that we are meeting have just lost their job. They are in transition and, in some cases, they can be sad, indifferent, or angry. The archivist's role is to bring them toward using our temporary storage service and making a definitive decision at a later time when they've had a chance to take a step back. Archivists, by informing them of the reasons why their career is an important component to building the country's collective political memory, oftentimes help them during an otherwise difficult time for a minister or a member of Parliament's employees. Boxes are brought to our vaults, registered, and clients are informed. If the politicians in question are made aware of our services, then our work is done. Whether they choose to use our service or not is up to them. Now let's move on to more serious matters, the results. Who does LAC offer its services to? Here we have two diagrams for the 2011 and 2015 results. In 2011, LAC identified 100 members of parliament and ministers of interest. Of these members of parliament, here is the funnel effect. 38 of them were defeated or decided not to run again. 16 decided to use LAC's services. In 2015, LAC identified close to 90 members of parliament and ministers of interest. Of these members of parliament, 64 were defeated, lost their ministerial responsibilities, or decided not to run again. To this day, and it's not over, 29 have decided to use LAC's services. When we look back and think of an election, it is simply a time of acquisition. There will be more. That politicians are not obligated to transfer their private documents to LAC, and that some may have other projects for their documents. This is what we would call a great harvest. Now, will our preparatory work allow us to truly make a service offering to a representative sample of members of parliament to acquire and store a complete documentary collection that is ultimately representative? Because that is our objective. If we look at the result of 2011 on this slide, we could expect that a larger number of Liberals or the Bloc Québécois would find themselves in other political parties, since we try and maintain the anonymity of those with whom we are negotiating. Therefore, these smaller parties find themselves in the other category to preserve their anonymity. That being said, we could expect that a large number of Liberals and Bloc Québécois members received a service offering, while a smaller number of Conservatives or NDP members have not. Also in 2015, we could expect that Conservatives and NDP members received a large number of service offerings. Is this the case?
That is exactly what happened in 2011 and 2015. Although in 2011, still a fairly good percentage of Conservatives received an offer. Why? There was a cabinet shuffle following the election, as always, so it's normal. So of course, even though Conservatives stayed in power, many ministers were reassigned, therefore prompting LAC to offer services. As for 2015, all Conservatives ministers lost their ministerial portfolio, even though some were re-elected, which means they all receive an offer of service. NDP lost 18 of their seats and got 17 of our offers. The Liberals didn't get any of our offers because they won a lot of seats. Also, you might be interested to know the following. We offered, out of the 46 offers we made after the election, so not including the MPs that decided not to run, we made 27 offers to ex-ministers, including the Prime Minister, and 19 offers to non-ministers, including leaders of party. By regions, I was very intrigued to see if we were able to, even though we can't predict anything, if we were able to at least have a good regional representation. So if we look at West, Center, East, and North, West being BC and Alberta together, and East being New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, and Newfoundland together, here are our results. We offered 19% of our offers to the West. They held 24% of the seats before the election. We offered 63% of our offers to central provinces. They held 73% of the seats before the election. 15 of our offers went to the East. They held 10% of the seats. And 2% of our offers went to the North. They held 1% of the seats. So we see that the tendency is very bang on. I'm very happy about that. So when it comes to gender too, are we having a representative or building a representative collection? Women held 25% of the seats in the House before the election. We offered them 28% of our offers, which means that men held 75% and they got 72% of our offers. These are impressive results when you know that, and I'm repeating myself, politicians don't have to donate their records to Library and Archives Canada. These results are a single result in time, a snapshot. Working towards acquiring the records of politicians is a long-term job and is done outside of the election mode as well. Records are most at risk. The records that are most at risk are targeted first, and we are constantly rebalancing as we go, from election to cabinet shuffle to retirement.
Finally, When it comes to preserving documentary heritage, nobody can claim to preserve everything by themselves. If LAC has ever been accused of choosing the most noteworthy collections and leaving the less interesting ones to other memory institutions, that time has long since passed. Acquisition strategies from different institutions guide the acquisition decisions, but the way in which individuals use these and where they would choose to consult the collections is now taken into consideration. LAC works closely with numerous memory institutions, whether provincial, territorial, academic and municipal, to ensure the preservation of politicians' collections. Whether the acquisition or the filing is done through LAC or another institution, the presence of LAC in Ottawa is often practical. Therefore, it isn't unusual that we ensure the appropriate packing and handling of documents, sometimes from another memory institution.
The team is now almost done with 2015, although more former politicians may change their mind or decide to give to Library and Archives Canada in the coming months. What is next for us? Continuing to acquiring the best records from this deposited material and to make it accessible to the researchers and Canadians in general. We are already integrating our 2015 lessons learned in our procedures and are getting ready for the next cabinet shuffle and election. I'm presenting these results today, but there are many people that are involved and many of them are in the room, so I'd like for them to get up so the people in the room, if there's any remaining, can see who are the actors that are in fact building their documentary political heritage in Canada. Please get up. Come on. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to take questions in both English and French. And is there some regions present? Yes? If you're in the region and you want to ask a question, just think about putting it on mute after the question so we don't hear the back noise. So I'm ready. And there are a few tough questions you could ask me, and we have more than half an hour, I think. Yes. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, I'm just wondering what the most interesting item that you've come across in one of the collections you acquired is. Anything out of the ordinary or quirky or...
Well, are we talking about material we rejected or material we acquired? Because if we're talking about material we rejected, there's a lot of interesting things. Maybe I can... when we hired the two archivists that work in Shawinigan, Lisa Tremblay-Goodyear is here today, and Bruno Lemay, there was a training time at the beginning for them, and I asked Bruno, as a very boring exercise, to go through all the answers to make sure they were not annotated, because if they were to be annotated, then maybe we would consider keeping them even though they are already in our published collection. So Bruno goes through one of the answers and finds $500 hidden in So, of course, politicians, when they give their records, they're supposed to clean them from their personal items, and we consider money to be personal items. So we returned the money to Monsieur Chrétien, who had anecdotes about what it could be. So we thought it was a very funny thing that he would remember having placed $500 at the beginning of his career, because this was dating from the 60s when he was finishing his lawyer's business, and he thought he had put the money there for hiding the money, I guess, instead of putting it in the bank. But not hiding, sorry, but putting it. Just realized it's very bad what I said, but it was not the cause. He just had placed it for safeguard and lost it. So, did I turn red here? Yeah, probably I did. Cut the tape, cut the tape. What else did we... Well, there's always... we find love letters, like in between spouses sometime, and if appropriate, we will return to the client if he prefers to have these love letters. I know the Chrétien font way better because I worked on it, so we found some that we returned to Monsieur and Madame Chrétien on their 50th anniversary. They were quite pleased about that. They dated from the beginning of his career as a politician. Thanks.